Flight attendant tears up black boy's passport, instant regret, as she gets fired immediately. The bustling cabin of Flight 2187 falls eerily silent as raised voices cut through the air. A flight attendant, her face contorted with anger, towers over a young black boy seated in first class. "This passport is clearly fake. How dare you try to deceive us," she hisses, waving the document in his face. The boy, trembling but defiant, responds, "Ma'am, that's my passport. I have every right to be here." Passengers crane their necks, smartphones discreetly capturing the unfolding drama. What began as a routine pre-flight check has escalated into a powder keg of tension, threatening to ignite at any moment. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comment section, and if you are a lover of justice and inspirational stories, don't forget to like, comment, and hit the subscribe button for more of these gripping stories. This is the story of 12-year-old Jimmy John, whose excitement for his first solo trip turns into a nightmare of discrimination and prejudice. As we peel back the layers of this incident, we'll uncover a tale that goes far beyond a simple misunderstanding, exposing the deep-rooted issues of racial profiling that continue to plague the airline industry. In the next 2 hours, we'll take you on a journey that challenges our perceptions of privilege, justice, and the power dynamics at play in our society. We'll explore how a single moment of prejudice can have far-reaching consequences, not just for those directly involved, but for an entire industry. Buckle up, because this flight is about to encounter some serious turbulence. The bustling terminal of John F. Kennedy International Airport hums with activity as travelers from all walks of life hurry to their destinations. Amidst the chaos, 12-year-old Jimmy John stands out, his eyes wide with excitement and a hint of nervousness. This isn't just any trip for Jimmy, it's his first solo flight, a rite of passage he's been eagerly anticipating for months. Jimmy isn't your average preteen traveler. As the son of Robert John, the CEO of Skyward Airlines, he's grown up surrounded by the world of aviation. From a young age, Jimmy has been fascinated by planes, spending countless hours poring over technical manuals and flight schedules. His room is a shrine to his passion, decorated with model airplanes and posters of various aircraft. Jimmy's dream is to follow in his father's footsteps, first as a pilot and eventually in airline management. Today's flight is more than just a trip, it's a test of independence, a chance for Jimmy to prove to his parents and himself that he's ready for greater responsibilities. He's flying first class, not because of his family's wealth, but because he saved up his allowance for months to upgrade his ticket. Jimmy wants to experience every aspect of air travel, just like the grown-ups do. As Jimmy makes his way through the airport, his path leads him to the exclusive Skyward Airlines first-class lounge. The lounge is a world apart from the busy terminal outside. Soft, ambient lighting creates a calm atmosphere, while plush leather seats and elegant decor speak of luxury and comfort. A gourmet buffet offers a tempting array of dishes, and a fully stocked bar caters to the adult passengers. Jimmy takes it all in with wide-eyed wonder. He helps himself to a plate of fresh fruit and settles into a comfortable chair near the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching planes take off and land with rapt attention. He imagines himself in the cockpit, going through pre-flight checks and communicating with the control tower. Meanwhile, in another part of the airport, flight attendant Sarah Miller prepares for her shift. At 35, Sarah is a veteran of the skies with over a decade of experience. She takes pride in her work, known for her efficiency and attention to detail. However, beneath her polished exterior lies a complex individual shaped by years of challenging experiences. Sarah grew up in a small, predominantly white town in the Midwest. As one of the few people of color in her community, she faced her share of discrimination and microaggressions. These experiences left their mark, instilling in her a deep-seated need to prove herself and a tendency to be on guard against perceived slights. Her career as a flight attendant was meant to be an escape, a chance to see the world and broaden her horizons. For the most part, it has been. Sarah has visited dozens of countries and met people from all walks of life. Yet, the job has also exposed her to new forms of prejudice. She's had to deal with passengers who've questioned her competence based on her race, and colleagues who've made insensitive comments. Over the years, Sarah has filed a few complaints about passenger behavior, but she's always been hesitant to push too hard, fearing for her job security. She's developed a tough exterior, a no-nonsense approach that some passengers find off-putting but that she sees as necessary armor. As Sarah goes through her pre-flight routine, she's unaware that this flight will be different from any other in her career. She has no idea that her interaction with a young passenger will set off a chain of events that will force her to confront her own biases and change the course of her life. The luxurious interior of the Skyward Airlines Boeing 787 Dreamliner awaits its first-class passengers. The cabin is a marvel of modern aviation design, with spacious suites offering privacy and comfort. Each suite is equipped with a lie-flat bed, a large entertainment screen, and a personal minibar. The soft lighting and muted color scheme create an atmosphere of tranquility, a stark contrast to the usual stress of air travel. As the first-class passengers begin to board, among them is Mrs. Evelyn Thompson, an elegant black woman in her 70s. Mrs. Thompson carries herself with the quiet dignity of someone who has seen and overcome much in her lifetime. A retired civil rights attorney, she has spent decades fighting against racial discrimination in all its forms. Mrs. Thompson settles into her suite, directly across the aisle from where Jimmy will be seated. She notices the young boy as he boards, his excitement palpable. She smiles to herself, reminded of her own grandchildren and their zest for life. What Mrs. Thompson doesn't realize is that she will soon play a crucial role in the events about to unfold. Her years of experience in identifying and addressing racial bias will prove invaluable as she becomes an unexpected mediator in a tense situation. As the boarding process continues, it's important to understand the context of racial profiling in air travel. Despite efforts to eliminate discrimination, studies have shown that passengers of color are still disproportionately targeted for additional screening and questioning. A 2019 report by the Government Accountability Office found that the TSA had received about 3,700 complaints alleging civil rights and civil liberties violations related to passenger screening in a span of less than 2.5 years. These complaints ranged from allegations of profiling based on race or ethnicity to claims of rude or unprofessional behavior by security personnel. Moreover, a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences asserted that racial profiling in airport security is no more effective than random screening, due to the vast outnumbering of innocent travelers compared to potential threats. Despite this, incidents of apparent profiling continue to make headlines. In 2009, the American Civil Liberties Union filed a lawsuit on behalf of a black man who claimed he was illegally detained and questioned at Boston's Logan International Airport solely because of his race, 43. More recently, in 2021, several Muslim women filed complaints after allegedly being singled out for additional screening due to their hijabs. These incidents are not isolated. They reflect a broader pattern of bias that persists in air travel, despite official policies prohibiting discrimination. It's against this backdrop that Jimmy's journey is about to unfold, setting the stage for a confrontation that will bring these issues into sharp focus. As Jimmy makes his way down the aisle of the first-class cabin, his eyes wide with wonder, he's oblivious to the complex dynamics at play. He's simply a boy excited about his first solo flight, unaware that he's about to become the center of a situation that will challenge perceptions, expose biases, and potentially change lives. How will Jimmy's encounter with Sarah Miller change both of their lives forever? The first-class cabin of Flight 2187 buzzes with the quiet chatter of passengers settling into their luxurious seats. Jimmy John, his eyes still wide with excitement, carefully stows his backpack and slides into his window seat. He pulls out his phone, snapping a quick selfie to commemorate the moment, unaware of the storm brewing just a few rows away. Sarah Miller, her crisp uniform a stark contrast to the plush interior of the cabin, moves efficiently through her pre-flight checks. Her eyes scan the passengers, cataloging faces and comparing them to the manifest in her hand. As her gaze falls on Jimmy, a flicker of confusion crosses her face, quickly replaced by a hardened look of suspicion. With purposeful strides, Sarah approaches Jimmy's seat. Her voice, clipped and professional, cuts through the ambient noise of the cabin. "Excuse me, young man," May I see your boarding pass and passport, please? Jimmy, startled by the sudden address, fumbles in his pocket for the documents. Sure, here you go, he says, handing them over with a smile. Sarah's eyes narrow as she scrutinizes the passport. The photo matches the boy in front of her, but something doesn't sit right. In her mind, the pieces don't fit: a child traveling alone in first class, a passport that seems too new, too perfect. Is there a problem? Jimmy asks, his smile faltering under Sarah's intense gaze. Sarah's response is curt. I'm going to need you to come with me, please. We need to verify some information. Jimmy's heart begins to race. He's done nothing wrong, but the flight attendant's tone and demeanor suggest otherwise. But I don't understand. My passport is real. I'm supposed to be here. Sarah's voice lowers, but her words carry a sharp edge. Listen, kid. I don't know how you got this far, but this charade ends now. This passport is clearly fake. The accusation hangs in the air, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. Mrs. Thompson, seated across the aisle, leans forward, her brow furrowed with concern. Jimmy's voice trembles as he tries to explain. It's not fake. My dad is Robert John. He's the CEO of Skyward Airlines. You can call him. Sarah's expression hardens further. Now you're claiming to be the CEO's son? This is getting ridiculous. I've had enough of these lies. In a moment that will be replayed countless times in the coming days, Sarah's frustration boils over. With a sudden, violent motion, she grips Jimmy's passport and tears it in two. The sound of ripping paper seems to echo through the cabin. Gasps of shock ripple through the first-class section. Jimmy stares in disbelief at the torn halves of his passport in Sarah's hands, his eyes welling with tears. What have you done? Jimmy's voice is barely a whisper, shock giving way to fear and anger. That's my passport. You can't do that. Sarah, realizing the gravity of her action, falters for a moment. But rather than backing down, she doubles down. This is what happens when you try to deceive us. Security will escort you off this plane. Jimmy's composure crumbles. Tears stream down his face as he frantically reaches for his phone. I need to call my dad. Please, just let me call my dad. As Jimmy struggles with his phone, his fingers shaking too much to unlock it, Mrs. Thompson rises from her seat. Her voice, calm but steely, cuts through the tension. Young lady, I believe you've made a grave error here. Sarah turns, startled by the intervention. Ma'am, please return to your seat. This is an official matter. Mrs. Thompson stands her ground. I'm Evelyn Thompson, a retired civil rights attorney. What I've just witnessed is a clear violation of this young man's rights. I strongly advise you to reconsider your actions. Other passengers, emboldened by Mrs. Thompson's stand, begin to voice their concerns. A businessman in the front row speaks up. I've seen that boy in the Skyward Lounge before. He's not lying about who he is. A woman a few rows back adds, this is outrageous. You can't just accuse a child and destroy his documents. The cabin erupts into a cacophony of voices, some defending Jimmy, others demanding answers from Sarah. The once peaceful first-class section has transformed into a scene of chaos and confrontation. Sarah, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, attempts to regain control. Everyone, please remain in your seats. This situation is under control. But it's clear that the situation is anything but under control. Jimmy, still crying, has managed to unlock his phone and is desperately trying to call his father. Mrs. Thompson has positioned herself between Sarah and Jimmy, a physical barrier against further confrontation. As the tension in the cabin reaches a fever pitch, the cockpit door opens. The captain, alerted by the commotion, steps out to assess the situation. His presence brings a momentary hush to the chaos. What's going on here? The captain demands, his authoritative voice cutting through the tension. Sarah, her composure slipping, attempts to explain. Captain, we have an unauthorized passenger with falsified documents. I was just Dash. Mrs. Thompson interrupts, her voice steady and clear. Captain, what we have here is a clear case of racial profiling and abuse of authority. This young man has been accused without evidence, his property has been destroyed, and his rights have been violated. The captain surveys the scene, a tearful Jimmy, a defensive Sarah, the torn passport on the floor, and a cabin full of agitated passengers. He makes a quick decision. Sarah, I need you to step aside. Security will be here shortly to sort this out. As if on cue, 2 airport security officers enter the cabin. The captain briefs them quickly, and they begin to take statements from Jimmy, Sarah, and the other passengers. Jimmy, his voice shaky but growing stronger, finally manages to reach his father on the phone. Dad? Dad, I need help. The flight attendant tore up my passport. They're saying it's fake. Please come quickly. The atmosphere in the cabin shifts as the reality of the situation begins to sink in. Passengers exchange worried glances, wondering how this will affect their flight. Sarah, now isolated near the galley, looks pale and shaken as the gravity of her actions begins to dawn on her. Mrs. Thompson gently places a comforting hand on Jimmy's shoulder. It's going to be all right, young man. The truth will come out. As security continues to gather information and Jimmy waits for his father to arrive, the question hangs heavy in the air. Will justice prevail for Jimmy, or will this incident be swept under the rug? The events that unfold in the next few hours will not only determine the fate of those directly involved, but will also shine a spotlight on the broader issues of racial profiling and accountability in the airline industry. The repercussions of this confrontation will extend far beyond the confines of Flight 2187, potentially catalyzing change in policies, procedures, and perceptions. Will justice prevail for Jimmy, or will this incident be swept under the rug? The tarmac outside Flight 2187 buzzes with activity as airport security vehicles converge on the scene. Inside the plane, tension hangs thick in the air as passengers wait anxiously, their travel plans now in limbo. The first-class cabin, once a sanctuary of luxury, has become ground zero for a situation that threatens to unravel the reputation of Skyward Airlines. Security officers meticulously gather statements from witnesses, their faces grave as they piece together the events that transpired. Jimmy, still visibly shaken, sits quietly in his seat, Mrs. Thompson's reassuring presence beside him. Sarah Miller stands apart, her earlier bravado replaced by a pallor of realization as the full weight of her actions begins to sink in. As the investigation unfolds, word of the incident spreads like wildfire through the airport. Staff members whisper in hushed tones, and curious onlookers crane their necks to catch a glimpse of the commotion. Social media platforms light up with eyewitness accounts and speculation, the hashtag Flight 2187 trending within minutes. Suddenly, a ripple of movement catches everyone's attention. Robert John, CEO of Skyward Airlines and Jimmy's father, strides purposefully through the jet bridge, his face a mask of concern and barely contained anger. As he enters the cabin, the atmosphere shifts palpably. Jimmy! Robert calls out, rushing to embrace his son. Are you all right? What happened? Jimmy, overcome with relief at his father's arrival, breaks down in tears. Dad, they said my passport was fake. The flight attendant tore it up. Robert's face darkens as he turns to face the security officers and flight crew. I want a full explanation, now. Who's responsible for this? The lead security officer steps forward, his demeanor professional but cautious. Mr. John, we're still gathering all the facts, but it appears there was a serious lapse in judgment by one of your flight attendants. Sarah, recognizing the gravity of her situation, attempts to speak. Mr. John, I made a mistake. I thought Dash. Robert cuts her off, his voice cold. You thought what? That it was acceptable to accuse and humiliate a child? To destroy government property? To profile a passenger based on their race? The cabin falls silent as the implications of Robert's words sink in. Sarah's face crumples as she realizes the full extent of her actions. Robert turns to address the captain and security team. "I want her removed from this flight immediately." She's fired, effective immediately. As Sarah is escorted off the plane, Robert addresses the remaining passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to extend my deepest apologies for this incident. Skyward Airlines does not tolerate discrimination in any form. We will be offering full refunds and additional compensation for the inconvenience caused today." In the hours that follow, the repercussions of the incident begin to unfold. Skyward Airlines issues a public apology, condemning the actions of their former employee and reaffirming their commitment to non-discriminatory practices. The story makes national headlines, igniting a fierce debate about racial profiling in air travel. Legal experts weigh in on the potential ramifications. This incident opens up Skyward Airlines to significant legal liability, explains prominent civil rights attorney Marcus Jennings. "We're looking at potential lawsuits for racial discrimination, emotional distress, and violation of civil rights. Moreover, the destruction of a passport, which is federal property, could lead to criminal charges against the former flight attendant." As the story gains traction, it catalyzes a broader conversation about racial bias in the airline industry. Civil rights organizations call for increased training and accountability measures for airline staff. The Department of Transportation announces a review of anti-discrimination policies across all major airlines. For Jimmy, the incident becomes a turning point. In the weeks that follow, he becomes an unexpected spokesperson for change. With his father's support, Jimmy shares his story at school assemblies and youth forums, raising awareness about racial profiling and the importance of standing up against injustice. The airline industry, shaken by the incident, begins to implement sweeping changes. Skyward Airlines takes the lead, introducing mandatory bias training for all employees and establishing an independent review board to handle discrimination complaints. Other airlines quickly follow suit, recognizing the need for systemic change. As the dust settles, the impact of that fateful day on Flight 2187 continues to ripple through society. For Jimmy, it's a harsh introduction to the realities of racial prejudice, but also a powerful lesson in resilience and the potential for positive change. For the airline industry, it serves as a wake-up call, forcing a long-overdue reckoning with issues of bias and discrimination. The incident on Flight 2187 becomes a case study in corporate responsibility and social justice, discussed in business schools and civil rights seminars alike. It stands as a stark reminder of the work still needed to create a truly equitable society and the power of individual voices in sparking meaningful change. As for Sarah Miller, her actions that day serve as a cautionary tale. Her story becomes part of anti-bias training programs, a powerful example of how unchecked prejudices can lead to devastating consequences. In the end, what began as a traumatic experience for a young boy transforms into a catalyst for industry-wide reform. Jimmy's ordeal, while painful, paves the way for a more inclusive and equitable future in air travel. It's a testament to the idea that even in the darkest moments, there's potential for growth, learning, and positive transformation. How will this experience shape Jimmy's future and impact the airline industry as a whole? As our journey through this powerful story comes to an end, we're left with important lessons and a call to action that resonates far beyond the confines of Flight 2187. The incident involving Jimmy John and Sarah Miller serves as a stark reminder that discrimination and racial profiling continue to plague our society, even in spaces we consider progressive and regulated. It underscores the critical need for vigilance, education, and action from all of us. To our viewers, we implore you, if you witness or experience discrimination in travel or any other aspect of life, speak up. Report these incidents to the appropriate authorities. Document what you see. Your voice matters, and your actions can make a difference. There are numerous organizations dedicated to fighting for equality in travel and beyond. Consider supporting groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, which has a long history of challenging discriminatory practices in the airline industry. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, also works tirelessly to combat racial profiling in various sectors, including transportation. For those in the travel industry, we encourage you to advocate for comprehensive anti-bias training in your workplaces. Push for clear, enforceable policies that protect passengers from discrimination. Be the change you want to see in your industry. To passengers, we say, know your rights. Familiarize yourself with airline policies and federal regulations that protect you from discrimination. The U.S. Department of Transportation provides resources on passenger rights and how to file complaints if you experience or witness discriminatory behavior. As we reflect on the progress made since Jimmy's incident, it's clear that the airline industry has taken significant steps towards addressing racial bias. Many airlines have implemented more rigorous training programs, established independent review boards, and created clearer channels for reporting and addressing discrimination. However, the work is far from over. Racial profiling and discrimination remain persistent issues, not just in air travel, but across various aspects of society. It's crucial that we maintain momentum and continue pushing for systemic change. The story of Jimmy John reminds us that behind every statistic, every policy change, there are real people whose lives are profoundly affected by discrimination. It also shows us the power of standing up against injustice, even in the face of authority. As we move forward, let's carry with us the lessons learned from this incident. Let's strive to create a world where no child, no person, has to face the humiliation and fear that Jimmy experienced. A world where diversity is celebrated, where prejudice is challenged, and where justice prevails. Remember, change starts with each one of us. Every time we speak up against discrimination, every time we choose empathy over prejudice, we take a step towards a more equitable society. The journey may be long, but together, we can create a future where incidents like the one on Flight 2187 become relics of the past. Thank you for joining us on this important journey. As you leave this video, we challenge you to reflect on your own biases, to educate yourself and others, and to take action in your own communities. Together, we can make a difference. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more of this gripping story.